welcome, Christian metal community. We're here with Cody, and he is with Igniting the Sky and Westminster Effects. We'll talk more about that later. My name is Jimmy, and we have Jay. We're part of the leadership team for a Christian metal group. How are you doing today, Cody?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, man. So tell everybody, what part of the country do you live in?
I live in Lyman, South Carolina, 2 addresses down from Greer, South Carolina, which is right in between Greenville and Spartanburg, South Carolina,
Nice.
which is in the upstate, right in between, since we're right in between all of the places, right in between Atlanta and Charlotte.
Yes.
So if you draw a straight line of I-85 between Atlanta and Charlotte, I'm pretty much right in the middle of that.
That's crazy. So
So
that means you
I
and
live
Jimmy are
about-
almost neighbors.
I live about 45 minutes from you, and what's nice about this area is we're not in Charlotte or Atlanta, but we can go to a show there in a couple hours and back.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yep. Or
So-
Columbia if you absolutely have to.
I only go to Columbia if it's business, to visit the zoo,
Yeah.
or for a concert. That's it.
Exactly. And then also Asheville has some pretty decent shows.
I saw
So-
Stryper there not long ago. So, yeah, I went to the Orange Pill. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, awesome. Well, so Cody, tell us, did you grow up in a religious home, and did you grow up in a musical home?
I did. So grew up in so all right, so let's just air all the dirty laundry. I'm just kidding. So it's really interesting. I grew up in they don't call themselves a denomination, but it's a denomination if we're honest, called the Church of Christ.
Yeah.
Pretty legalistic. And so
Yeah, right. Familiar with that.
and so in church, 3 times a week, whatever. And also went to a Christian middle school and high school. So basically some form or fashion of the faith was influencing me all the way through. And then I also went to North Greenville University, where I got a journalism degree, and that's a Southern Baptist school. And so the great thing is, like, every time I bring it up, like on my own podcast or whatever, my dad will text me like, yeah, sorry about that, about the Church of Christ thing.
Man.
And like we've all, like, I have one sister, and then my parents we're all out of that, and we're all in good churches now.
Yeah,
and my parents and I are at the same church here in Greer, where my dad is an elder and I am a deacon. And
nice.
so that's a really good time. In
what,
terms of
Let's
go
stop
ahead.
right there real quick. So if somebody's in the area looking for a church, what church is that?
Yeah, it's Resurrection Church in Greer, and it's on Highway 14, just north of downtown Greer.
Yep.
And you can go to rezfaith.com, REZ Faith, if you want to learn more.
Oh man, y'all should book the Res Band, and life would be complete.
It's Inception, right?
Yeah,
So it's a res
that's cool.
within a res.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that church. So real quick before you go on the next one, it's very interesting because I know the Church of Christ do not use any instrumentation, and here you are in a Christian rock band. So I guess you've had quite a journey.
Yeah,
And,
it's the delicious irony of multiple layers,
Sure.
honestly, where being one in a Christian hardcore metal, whatever you want to call it, band, though they don't have an issue with that because it's not in church.
Yeah.
And I understand that there are certain other, like, conservative Presbyterian denominations who are convictionally a cappella, and that's fine. But the Church of Christ, a lot of times, not every time, some of them make it a salvation issue.
Yeah,
even.
they do.
And that's where it gets really problematic, right? Like,
Right.
if you're convinced by the Bible with the regulative principle of worship, and I'm a regulative guy myself, but I just don't go that far, right? Because the Psalms command, hey, praise him with XYZ instruments, right? And so
you were
I can't
actually
go
reading the Bible,
right
and applying.
right.
So
That's the goal.
Awesome.
That's the goal.
Within the first year of me, when I got married, there was Christ that came by our house, and at the time I was booking and promoting concerts, Christian 100% Christian rock and metal and stuff. And
Right.
so I've always loved a good debate, and so I'm like, sure, come on in, we'll talk about it. And so they're pointing out, these specific scriptures about not wearing clothes made of two different types of cloth and all this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let's read
Interesting.
the whole thing in context, right?
Right.
And then to your point, they brought it back to salvation and all this kind of stuff. And my wife, I didn't know it at the time, but my wife had went and turned the heat all the way up, and they kept going, it's hot in here, and they finally left. She told me later. I was like, I didn't know your tactics, but yeah,
That's brilliant.
I don't know if because I know I met you at a show about a year ago,
Yep.
or a little more. I don't know if I told you, but I actually went to North Greenville as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was a Christian studies major. I just didn't get my degree.
So you had Walter Johnson, I'm sure, for a class.
Possibly, I definitely know the name. I know I had Dr. Haney. And this has been a long time ago now. But yeah,
I get it. I get it.
And some of the people that I went to college with that did graduate work there now. So.
Oh yeah, same for me too.
Awesome.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So let's see, into the musical home. So yes and no. It wasn't like pushed on me. My sister got into music before I did. And so she started taking piano lessons, I think, when she was in kindergarten, and I would have been in second grade. The first thing I latched onto was sports. Big baseball fan, started playing baseball when I was 5. And still a huge baseball fan, but I got, let's see, I started playing guitar in 7th grade, I believe.
Oh,
I was
wow.
13. Is the Christmas of 2000 is when I got my first guitar.
Did you just pick that instrument to learn?
Yeah, and I had a couple of friends who played and whatnot, and my dad also played guitar, so we always had a guitar, even though he wasn't as actively playing it at the time. And so it's kind of what I gravitated toward. And then, being into that was also when I was getting into more aggressive forms of music and whatnot.
Yeah.
So stuff like, well, even though Reliant K isn't particularly aggressive, but when you combine Reliant K with Zayo and both of those ends of the spectrum, and yeah, and so it's like, okay, I see what those guys are doing, and of course the guitarists are up front at the front of the stage, so that's just what I gravitated toward.
That is so interesting. So, we were just talking about the whole metal and post-hardcore thing. How would you classify the band? In fact, let me preface that, because I was looking on a band. There's so many hashtags on someone's like, mad, like artcore, hardcore, metal.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's, within the original lineup of the band, you had someone like me who brought a lot of, basically my influences were pop punk, so stuff like MXPX, Blink, Newfound Glory, plus like mid-2000s screamo, Census Failed, from First to Last, stuff like that, and then like mid-2000s metalcore. And then as we got the band together, well, our bassist, who had a guitar degree, so he was the best guitarist in the band.
Nice.
And so he had a huge Coheed influence. And then we had 3 other guys, and then so my wife was also in the band when we were still dating. But then these other 3 guys had a big influence from stuff like Attack Attack and Emarosa and Dance Gavin Dance, and kind of that R&B influence of post-hardcore with the super modulated vocals and stuff like that. So that was kind of the original. And now that our third guitarist and I are splitting clean vocals, we can't do that, and our voices aren't that high. So it's, you know how bands work, is there's always the ebb and flow of stylistic influences and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that so many bands in the early 2000s gravitated towards metalcore,
Yeah.
and even the term metalcore um, became associated with screamo and emo.
Oh, dude, don't get me started.
Yo, it was such an interesting time, and
Yeah.
some people like totally abandoned, that. I mean, it almost
Hmm.
became a fad type of thing, and everybody
Yep.
was trying to be underdog. Everybody was trying to be
Yep.
us as I lay dying, even though they
Yeah.
took a turn towards like,
Or Kill Switch
yeah,
or
kill
The
switch.
Devil Wears Prada or yeah.
Oh, Devil Wears Prada is a good one. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it was interesting. Um,
I play my band played shows with multiple bands. This didn't just happen once, but
right.
multiple bands where literally before before this band would start playing, they would be like, "We're like the Devil Wears Prada," and
Oh, what?
you're just gonna lay it out there like that, huh?
That is crazy. But I can see it happening. But I think listening to your music, even though I hear all those influences, I still hear some things that make your band unique. And
Mm,
it's like you can. I hear the things that make your band unique, and then also I do, like I said, I do hear the influences, and it's like
Sure.
you're not afraid to wear those influences on your sleeve, right?
sure, yeah, yeah,
And
I appreciate that.
yeah, I think that's a cool thing. So what really motivates you to I guess stick to that style or whatever?
So I think at this point, it's kind of come more naturally to me,
Hmm.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Where this band has kind of it's been dormant for a while, and we're pushing it back out into the scene, but and it was for but it's existed for over 10 years. So,
Hmm.
and so we kind of picked up some patterns along the way of not having a whole lot of song structure. For example, we don't do the verse chorus thing very much.
Right,
It's
right.
it's a verse and then a chorus and then all right, let's do something completely different and then go back to the chorus. So that's just kind of what we do. And so that's kind of what a lot of it is just comfort,
No,
honestly.
the thing is, I do appreciate it though. I think that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what's crazy is now, like I said, in the 2000s, everybody was like, everybody, let's do it. Now that everybody's abandoned it, I do see some people
Right.
starting to kind of bring it back a little bit, and there's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with it. I think
right.
there's room for everybody.
Right. And what I don't want to do, and I kind of pushed against a couple of the things that we had started to do way
Mhm.
back in the day. So when we were getting the band together, I initially didn't want the keys and synth because
Yeah,
I didn't want to become like a Nintendo core band, like Attack
yeah, yeah,
Attack,
exactly.
Asking Alexandria, stuff like that.
Mhm.
I can't
Mhm.
believe
Nothing
that's
wrong with
actually a
that.
real thing.
Right.
It is. Oh,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. And so, like, nothing wrong with that. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And, uh, but like, I don't even remember where I was going with that thought, but
But
I
but
lost it.
what? That brings up something because okay, I'm a keyboard player, so the first thing like that's like one of
Mm.
the first things that I heard um,
Yeah.
is the keyboards. I'm like, yes, keyboards. There we go.
Yeah. 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 And these days, unfortunately, we don't have a live keys guy.
Mhm.
We're putting those on a track. We play to a click track with in-ear monitors and that kind of thing. But it does provide an extra layer of texture, right?
Mhm.
Where we can almost have like dueling leads with
Yeah.
between keys and guitar and stuff like that. And I really have loved doing that kind of thing.
Oh man,
Well,
yeah. That's we're gonna talk about in ears more, so I'm gonna let Jimmy get some
I
questions
was
Oh
on.
gonna
We're
yeah,
gonna
say
talk about
if you
in
really
ears.
want to, step up your live game on stage, all you got to do is get a guitar player. And
we've done that.
okay, oh nice, okay,
Nice.
Our
Yes.
yeah, we've had two different keyboardists in our history, and our original guy came back for I don't know a year or so, and he
yeah,
actually played a guitar when he came back, and that
that's
was a
so
lot of
cool.
fun.
Yeah. So we kind of got like a overview of the band sound and all that. How did the band kind of formed? And I know your wife sent them. How did all that come
Hmm.
about?
Craigslist.
Oh,
Yeah,
Wow.
the wife
yeah,
or the band?
not the wife.
One ad.
Clarification is key.
Well played. That is fantastic.
Didn't
So,
MXPX have a song called One Ad or something like that? Hold up.
right.
All right.
So the way I got my wife is even dumber, actually.
Okay.
Is
Let's hear
so
that.
Yes.
yeah. So I was working at Hot Topic,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and this girl came in,
Mhm.
and the dumb line that I'll throw out there is I checked her out and I checked her out. And so she ended up trying out for the band that I was in at the time,
Oh
and we
wow.
took her, and then that band broke up, and then we kept trucking along, and we were like, let's do the music thing still, and literally it came together with Craigslist ads, and so our singer and he brought along his brother on drums, and then his brother's best friend on keys, and then we just kept on it with Craigslist and got a bassist.
Oh
And
wow.
now that
Nice.
bassist is my lawyer.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so it's been an interesting ripple effect looking back through the years, and so yeah, literally Craigslist is how it all came together.
Craigslist bringing people together. So
That's right.
Yes,
Wow.
so where
exactly.
did the name Igniting the Sky form from?
It's one of those where it doesn't actually, like, I didn't sit there and come up with a meaning for it. Literally, I thought it sounded cool. But it probably stems from my morbid obsession with nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Honestly.
Okay.
Like, I've just been fascinated by, heavy weaponry forever, and well, what does an atomic bomb or a nuclear bomb do is it literally ignites the sky, and
Sure.
there's no getting away from the fact that it happened when you see it, right? And hopefully you're far enough away that it doesn't instantly blind you forever or vaporize you, but it, it happened, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so that actually influenced our artwork decision on And Yet Love Is Near. And so the cover art for that is Hiroshima after the bomb,
Oh
where
wow.
Mhm.
it's just laid to waste, and yet love is near, right? And so that was, yeah, I'm a dork for that kind of stuff. So.
That's ironic only because like I said, I've been listening to your music, and then also I was reading a story literally earlier. It's a Transformer story, actually, comic book
Yeah,
Transformer.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like the Decepticons were like uh, looking to bomb New York or something like that with a nuclear weapon. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
Roll
That's
right,
some
out.
serious
right,
igniting the sky right there.
right,
Like,
yeah, yep.
Decepticons roll out.
yes, Decepticons. Right. All right, yo, that's well. Okay, I want to go back to what we were talking about with live tracks for a second. You were
Yeah.
talking about using in ears, and you were talking about playing the tracks. I know some bands do and some bands don't. What do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of playing with tracks
Mm.
versus playing without them?
The immediate disadvantage that comes to mind is one of the big disadvantages that keeps us from using tracks at church. So our worship minister is a big "what you see is what you get" guy in terms of
Okay,
church, right?
interesting.
There's nothing morally wrong with having a
Right.
strings track or something like that. But if you get off of that track,
Yes.
it's tough. It's really tough to recover. We have had a show like that where everything was just going wrong, and somehow we managed to only get off of the track by half a beat one time, and we immediately recovered. So I was pretty proud of us for doing that.
Nice.
so, but so that's the main disadvantage. You got to stay on. You got to stay tight. If you get loose at all, it's game over. The
Mhm.
big advantage is everyone's on the same page, especially if you have the accented one. So the higher pitched 1, 2, 3, 4.
Mhm.
Like, all right, I know where the one is. If I start to get lost, let me just find the one, right?
Yes, sir.
And so there's that. There's especially from a performance standpoint, we can add so many more things that aren't necessarily there. And
Mhm.
so if it's something like an extra harmony, or where maybe one of us doesn't have that particular strength in that kind of harmony, we can add that in. Or if we want to layer another guitar just to thicken up the sound, we can do that. If we want to add a synth pad or an organ or whatever, we can make that happen. Plus, this is how bass drops happen most commonly, at least the automated kind.
Yeah.
And that's way easier on our drummer than having to remember to hit the thing, and especially to hit the thing in the right key. Hey,
Oh God,
no,
yeah.
this song's an E. Stop it. Right? No, don't hit that one. So, from my perspective, being on an in-ear rig, it's it's a lot more comforting because I have the security blanket of that click track. Plus, I don't have to worry about the half-drunk sound guy
Mhm.
to make the monitor mix
Well, that doesn't
doable.
happen now, does it?
Right? Never, never. Um, and so like it's if something goes wrong, it's something on my end. And so
Mhm.
I'd rather that be the case than have to rely on somebody else doing his job or not.
Right.
That's good. So I'm looking at your social media. It says you're a guitar geek, a baseball fan, and theology nerd. Does
Yep.
that describe you pretty well?
Yeah, for the most part.
So
I
so
like I like to be well rounded. We'll put it that way. I have a lot of
yeah
interests, and I'm way too into all of them.
yeah. So what does a guitar geek mean to you? Like how into guitars are you?
Well, my office is currently a wreck. I just got a parts order in, or I'd show you around.
Mhm.
Well, show us your what's your prized possession guitar? You got that one?
Yeah, it's right there.
Oh, nice.
It's that Flying V right there. So that's a Gibson
Yeah.
faded Flying V. It's the 1 year, I think it was 2001, where they did the crescent moon inlays instead of the dot inlays.
Oh
It
wow.
also has the a gold Gibson logo on the truss rod cover instead of silver, which is fairly rare. I actually had a guy offer
You
me like $100 for it one time,
you
just the
wouldn't
truss
know
rod
that.
cover.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's my baby. It's my first real guitar. I had a Squire Strat Pack to start, and that was the first real one that I got, and I got a killer deal on it, and I have beat that thing up, and it
Is
just
that
keeps
it?
trucking.
Is that your recording guitar or touring or neither?
Yeah, it's my number one for playing shows.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
But in terms of recording, I for one I double track everything, and what I like to do
Yeah.
is use a different guitar when I double track,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and so that helps add a little bit more texture. It highlights other frequencies that this guitar doesn't highlight as much and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
recording, I'm all over the map.
Okay. And as far
Interesting.
as baseball, so you got a Braves hat on and a
I
Miami
do.
shirt. So I guess
Yeah.
yeah. So is
Yeah.
Braves your number one team?
Oh yeah, I have a tomahawk tattoo on my leg,
Oh
so
well, you can't get more
Nice.
fan.
I kind
You
of
might
die
be a
hard.
real fan.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
especially growing up in the '90s. That was a whole lot of fun.
Dude, have
Even
you
though they only
seen?
got the one World Series, that was a whole lot of
Yeah,
fun watching those guys.
it was they were so good. Have you seen the Nolan Ryan documentary?
I've seen parts,
Man,
but
it's
that
fantastic.
guy he was something else. And so like one of the interesting things, I was talking with a friend about useless baseball stats because there's
Yeah,
so many of them. And so Nolan Ryan retired the year Greg Maddux went to the Braves,
right.
uh, which was 1993. And so, like, Maddux Moltz Glavin was what I cut my teeth on. Like,
Sure.
I played
Mhm.
catcher for years and years. And so that was part of why I liked watching the Braves is I could watch the catcher interactions with those guys. Or like I would watch them call signs, like, oh, okay, Smoltz is about to throw a split finger right here, or whatever. So
Oh wow.
uh, it's the fact that there's so much strategy involved. There's so much probability and statistics, and there's also just such incredible stories.
Sure.
I just heard one. My favorite baseball podcast is called In the Bullpen with a guy named Mark Dewey. He's a former relief pitcher, former minor league coach, and he told this story about how Johnny Bench, so Hall of Fame catcher, widely considered one of the top 3 catchers ever. He was a rookie in his first All-Star game. And so he's in the clubhouse, doesn't really know what's going on. He's kind of nervous. Do I belong here? And Willie Mays,
Wow.
Willie Mays,
Yeah.
comes up to him and says, "You belong here. You should be starting." Right.
That's
and
incredible.
that gave him so much more confidence in his first All-Star game, goes on to, be part of the Big Red Machine and so on. So you don't understand the ripple effects things have in the moment, but looking back, it's like, that's 2 legends talking, but one of them had to encourage the other one.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then the last thing is theology nerd. You actually have geek and nerd in 2 different things. You realize that, right? But you own it, right?
I cannot deal.
You broke up there for a second. Sorry about that.
I said the last thing is theology nerd. So you actually, in your bio, you have geek and nerd, but you own it.
Yes.
So Jay, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Throw out a theology question for Cody.
Uh-oh. Okay. All right, here we go. Dang, I just thought of like a million of them.
I know
let's let's talk about premillennialism
pre-post
versus postmillennialism.
Let's go. This is a hobby horse. All right, what about it?
All right, so I guess some people believe that. Actually, let's take this back. I was about to talk about premillennialism. Let's talk about pre-tribulation versus post-tribulation.
Ooh, okay.
Let's go with that one. That's fair. Because so many people believe that, obviously that Jesus is going to return before the tribulation, and many believe that he's going to return after the tribulation.
Well, and some people believe we're in it now.
And some people believe we're in it now. And some people believe it's already happened.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you do too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Good. Okay. So this isn't going to be hostile then.
No, it's not going to be hostile at all. I mean, here's the thing. I've kind of gone from all angles at some point. That's what's crazy.
Right. This is one of the eschatology question is it's so loaded, right? Like people get. I particularly get this from more dispensational guys, the guys who believe in a pre-tribulational rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation and then a literal 1,000-year reign and stuff like that. They're typically, and I'm calling them this as brothers and sisters, right? They're the ones who get the most uptight about this.
Yes, sir.
And they often make that a primary issue where historically the creedal and confessional way that it's a primary issue is Christ will return.
Yeah.
He makes all things new. The dead will be raised bodily, and he will deliver the kingdom to the Father and reign forever. So that's the primary issue. The dead will be judged, the dead will be raised, and Christ reigns over all.
Right.
The real question then is how we get there. Right. And so one of our problems in the American church is we treat church history like the book of Acts, and then some weird Catholics did some stuff, and then Billy Graham shows up and gets everybody saved.
Exactly.
That's how we treat it. And so what people don't realize is the notion of a pre-tribulational rapture did not exist, period, in church history until the 1800s. And I'm saying this with all charity. I'm not consigning anybody to hell. Being cards on the table, being a post-millennial guy, I would be more than happy for a golden age to arrive and it all be dispensationalists looking around wondering why the world got better instead of worse. And so what it really comes down to, let me pull up a tab on Bible Gateway real quick. So what it really comes down to is the dating and timing of Revelation. And and really, chapter 1 gives you all of those answers. And so it starts the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his servants the things that must soon take place.
Yes, soon. Yep.
And the Greek is, this is like, it's urgent. This is about to happen. This isn't, there's not really a cop out for, oh, well, with God, a day is like 1,000 years. Like, no, there's a real urgency that the readers of the original readers of this book need to know what's going on. Right. And so you go a little farther down. And so you have, behold, he's coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him.
Yep.
The people who put to death the Son of God will see him somehow. Like, all right, so there's more timing. And so, and then you even have I just learned this last year. This is absolutely incredible. So let me find it. Sorry, fellas. All right. Control F. Okay, there we go. So John has a vision of Jesus in his exalted state now, and it gives the descriptions of the hairs of his head were white, his eyes were a flame of fire, his feet were like burnished bronze. It's like, this is terrifying, right? So verse 16, in his right hand he held 7 stars. From his mouth came a sharp two-edged sword, and his face was like the sun shining in full strength. And what a lot of people don't realize is those 7 stars, well, that's how people referred to the planets in the ancient world, was the 7 wandering stars. So you had, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Sun, and the Moon. I think I got that right. Yeah. So those were the 7 stars, quote unquote, and Caesar was depicted as holding those stars in the Roman world, meaning Caesar controls the universe. So Jesus shows up, and in his right hand he's holding these 7 stars. Right? So Jesus is saying, no, I control the universe.
Exactly. Yeah.
Roman emperors, you don't. Right. And so verse 17, I saw him, I fell at his feet as though dead, but he laid his right hand on me, saying, fear not, I am the first and the last, and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. So in his right hand, he holds the universe together, and he uses that same hand to comfort John. Like, the book of Revelation was meant to comfort its initial readers, not to freak out readers 2,000 years later.
It's interesting. I think about, a lot of people, they don't realize. Now, we hear like, oh, they were thrown to the lion. Paul talks about how, people are being persecuted, everything about getting thrown to the lions, and getting hit, this other kind of stuff. But we're so far removed from that. I think that, we don't understand a lot of times that was a real thing, for real.
Yeah, and, absolutely. And when you reckon with the fact that if Christ is really the second Adam, and the first Adam was told to go and take dominion, and the first Adam failed, but then the second Adam succeeded, well, what's the second Adam doing?
Yeah.
Well, is he just going to let it get worse? Like, obviously, we see ebbs and flows through history. We have things like the Black Plague, the Muslim conquest, and all that kind of stuff. But he said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go disciple the nations. So go make the world like this. Right? That's what God told Adam to do in the garden. Make the world like this. And Christ told his apostles and the other 400 that were there, hey, go make the world like this. And he's gotten a pretty good return on his investment so far. You go from like 100 dudes in a room in the Middle East in a backwater in the Roman Empire. Now you got 2 billion strong 2,000 years later. That's pretty solid. And so, it looks bad right now. But if you actually look through the course of history, like, my goodness.
It was much worse. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think, Caligula, you familiar with Caligula? The He was immoral, people famously immoral to ever live. And he was actually emperor during a lot of the book of Acts.
Yep. Yep.
before, of course, Nero succeeded him. But it's like, well, all this stuff was going on. That's
Oh
what
yeah.
was going on in Rome.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
they
Like
were
the
really, man, they were up against some stuff. And I think another thing about Revelation is that it was showing that, a lot of those things would continue for a while. Like after he wrote that, like the same stuff Nero was doing, some other people would do,
yeah.
when
Sure.
but of course, fear not, because God has it under control. I guess at the
Right.
end of the day, and we know that God wins. I mean, He's already won.
Yeah, he's already won. He's still winning, and he will win in finality on the last day. Roman or 1 Corinthians 15 says he must reign, like with the implication being he's reigning now. He must reign until he has made his enemies his footstool.
Mhm.
So, and the last enemy to be defeated is death,
It's death.
which
Yes,
means there's a progression of enemies. He doesn't show up and magic them all into being defeated. There's a progression that's being defeated, and however you take Second Thessalonians 2, a lot of people think it's an end times thing. I don't think it is. I think it's referring to AD 70, but it talks about how Jesus will kill that man of lawlessness with the breath of his mouth. Right. And so, all right, well, what's the breath of his mouth? I take that to mean that's probably the Holy Spirit, which he literally breathed out on the church. Right. If you remember John, the Gospel of John, he breathes on his disciples and says, "Receive the Holy Spirit." So how does he take out the man of lawlessness? Well, apparently it's by the power of God the Holy Spirit. So like we need to be able to weave these things together, these themes together, and let the Bible speak for itself so often. And particularly in the book of Revelation, per verse you have more Old Testament references and allusions than any other New Testament book. It's insane how many references there are.
I think one thing that's really cool about, just to Jimmy even speaking about this, and then us kind of going this direction. One of the coolest things about like this particular subject matter, and just Revelation, all this stuff, is that it makes for really good metal songs. And so many people, both Christian and secular, have used versions of these events and this imagery and all that stuff to create metal. I mean, everything from Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast to
Halloween.
all the major bands. I think in a lot of ways,
Halloween has a whole album based around it.
Right.
Yeah.
Or doesn't War of Ages have like a ton of stuff about Revelation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And it's really easy to, well, let's put it this way. Revelation is chock full of stuff that we should make songs about. Right. Not arguing against that. But in terms of, I'm going to put this the worst way possible. Is that okay? It's the more sensational the take, the easier it is to make entertainment out of it. Absolutely. Right? Like, and so like if everything's going to hell in a handbasket, it's really easy to make like a dystopian novel about that. Whereas amillennialism and postmillennialism, like it doesn't make for a very good movie series or a good novel. But what postmillennialism has done is produced great art through the centuries. You like cathedrals and great works of art weren't made by people who were expecting to get raptured out of the world next Thursday.
That's fair. Minus Nicolas Cage's Left Behind movies, but other than that,
I said great works of art.
I never saw those for the record though. But maybe
I didn't either.
I met the Arthurs in Nashville actually.
Oh, nice.
I was actually randomly going through there, and I was meeting up with my god sister, like on the way to somewhere years ago, and Left Behind had just come out. And Tim LaHaye, I think it's like Jerry Jenkins or something, and Tim LaHaye or whoever. Yep. And they were having a book signing at Lifeway, at the Lifeway store. That was cool. That is pretty cool. I had not even heard of the books then.
Oh,
really? Of course, then it just like they totally blew up, and it was crazy. But yeah, so you just talked about just like the imagery of Revelation and, the Old Testament stuff. Another thing I thought about is that there are more songs in Revelation than there are in the rest of the New Testament.
Ooh, that I haven't made that connection. I learned something today.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so obviously one of those songs is the Song of Moses and the Lamb. Of course, that's like the big song.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's and I know you were talking about like Church of Christ and stuff, and just how they shun a lot of instruments, and I get it. Like if you look at the Bible, like in the way that they look at it, I kind of get that, but of course I totally disagree for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
So how does the Church of Christ leave out all of that?
Well, what happens is in the new, it really is all about the Old Testament and the New Testament church. I think that a lot of times when we look at church, it's weird how the Christian church looks at modern church, because we tend to apply Old Testament rules to New Testament churches, not realizing that churches were really just people gathering however. Now, the Bible says...
That'll preach.
In Acts 2, of course, it says that they met in homes, and it also says they met daily at the temple. And I use that a lot of times when I talk when talking to Sabbatarians, and it's like, hey, if the Bible says they met daily, it's like, why are you trying to exalt, I guess, a day or whatever? But also, along with that, they, like I said, they just did all kind of stuff. But Philip, when he not Philip, I look at him out of the scriptures, when Stephen, when the deacon Stephen, right before he got stoned, he gave this big sermon, and one of the biggest things that he talked about is that there is no house of the Lord anymore. Basically, he was saying that Solomon built the temple, and and then he said God doesn't dwell in temples made by hands. So this whole thing about people in churches trying to say this is the house of the Lord, you must reverence it, and all this stuff, it just doesn't exist. That's pretty much what Stephen was saying. And of course, they were like, let's stone him.
Yeah, you bring up good points, and so yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not a Sabbatarian. I am a Lord's Day guy, where basically the new creation was kicked off on the first day of the week. That's why Christians, right? That's why we're not Seventh Day Adventists,
right?
Who have myriad heresies mixed in anyway, including Trinitarian heresies. Like that's.
This is so interesting, dude. This is such an interesting thing to bring up.
You don't even know your background.
Like, not only that, but your father said, I used to be an Adventist.
Oh, nice. That's providential, right?
My dad.
But dude, this is crazy. So I want you to continue your point, but this is so funny because I talked about the name of your band and how I was reading some material about nuclear bombs. I also had a conversation today with Adventists about the historic teaching of Trinitarianism, and how there's been various schools of thought like within the Adventist church about that. I think now the thought is definitely that Jesus was not created and that he is God and has always been God. But a lot
of them have come around to that. But it definitely didn't start that way at all.
No, it did not start that way at all.
Right.
So yes, that's so funny that this is also being brought up. So yeah, you've really been in my head all day. But yeah.
And so the way I see the New Testament is a lot of people make this hard line between Old and New Testament. But what the New Testament is, it's not anything new. I really like the way Joe Boot puts it, and he's stealing it from somebody else, and I don't remember who, but he calls it the Older Testament and the Newer Testament, because what we tend to do when we just say Old Testament is like, it doesn't matter anymore. And so the law still applies. It's just that the ceremonial and sacrificial laws were gloriously fulfilled, right? So we should read Deuteronomy and see how much of a bloody mess that was. Like if you read I think it's Deuteronomy 1 of offering a bull, and you're pulling this thing apart, right? Yeah. And so by the end of this, you're just a mess, and that's been taken care of for you, right? And so like the moral law, obviously we recognize that the moral law still applies. The ceremonial law still applies in that Jesus fulfilled it. And so what typically happens is you have people try to make the even a good point using the wrong text.
Mhm.
So, for instance, Matthew 28, wherever two or more are gathered in my name, I'm there with them. That's a passage about church discipline.
Right.
It's
Right.
not saying, yeah, if two people get together and talk about Jesus, that you had church. And so you're absolutely correct in pointing out that the term ecclesia is
Mhm.
simply a term for assembly.
Right.
Like if you read the Septuagint, and I don't read Greek, but I know that this is in there. If you read the Septuagint, like an interlinear, right, where you have Greek and then
Mhm.
English
Mhm.
underneath, every time you have the assembly of, so sorry, the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Every time you have the assembly of Israel, it's ecclesia.
Mhm.
And the Septuagint is what's being quoted most of the time in the New Testament, as they're quoting
Mhm.
that Greek text. And so, really, the ecclesia, the church, as we've translated it in English, and that's another story, the church is really just a continuation of what God has been doing all along. It's just
Oh,
his
for sure.
assembled, redeemed people through
Mhm.
history. So, Moses is our brother just as much as Paul, or just
Mhm.
as much as John Piper, right? It's not a different thing. This is how partially how we become partial preterists and postmillennial, and not
Oh,
seeing
yeah,
a
oh,
distinction
absolutely.
between Israel and the church, right? It all ties together. And so is God telling one giant beautiful story, or is it disjointed, right? And so
No,
that's really what it comes down
it's
to.
one. Here, you bring
And
up another point about just about the sacrifices. I think that, like I said, because people look at church in such a way modernly and try to apply like those same rules, what people
mhm.
don't realize is that the temple, they weren't like in church like singing hymns and like
Right.
saying preaching and stuff. They were slaughtering animals.
I thought they were
Right.
singing "Victory in Jesus," man. Come on.
Right.
You know,
They're
in the synagogues, of course, that's where they taught that. But as far as the
right.
actual temple, they were in there like pretty much it was a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, it had to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely correct about that. So at the same time, we do have the doctrine of progressive revelation, right?
Oh, of
So
course.
right. So God didn't show up in Genesis 1:1 and say, "I am Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, eternally existing in three persons in one substance," right? Like we didn't get that in Genesis 1. You get that gradually. And so what you do see baked into the cake of creation,
Yeah,
uh,
let us.
right, let us, but then you also have 6 days of work and a day of rest. So there's
Hmm.
something there. And
Hmm.
so we have to reckon with that. And then you have not giving up meeting together, but stirring one another up in works. We have the command to be submissive to elders. We
Hmm.
have the command to gather. And so,
Hmm.
what does that look like? And so, there are some instances where we need to be more gracious to each
Yeah.
other, but you can't get away from the fact that it's not meant to be you and your bro hanging out at
Right, right,
Starbucks.
right, right, right.
Right, like we're on the same page with that. Now,
Yeah.
can we be overly legalistic in saying
Oh, God.
you went out of town and the only possible way that you could get back was to catch an 8 a.m. flight and you had to miss church and therefore you're in sin, you need to repent or you're going to hell. That's a bit much, right?
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. For
but
sure.
but but I think we can agree on the fact that the American church has not prioritized gathering with the saints on the Lord's Day
Hmm.
to the point that it's been detrimental for us. It's been really unhealthy for the American church as a whole
Mm.
because we've just said, church, whatever. My kid has a
Hmm.
travel ball tournament that day. I coached baseball. I coached travel ball. I know how that goes, right? So
Yeah,
I'm not speaking from without experience.
That
right.
is.
That is such a
We've
fascinating
all heard
conversation.
that.
I think that part of
Yeah.
Project 2025. So me, I'm like totally coming out of a Sabbatarian,
Mm-hmm.
religion denomination, and also being on the alternative side of that, where people just
Right.
promote the Lord's Day. Like obviously, I believe in the Lord's Day and the Sabbath, like both of them. I
Sure.
support people
Sure.
that observe either, but I don't observe either. But I'm in
Mm.
church both days of the week.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting because I'm
Right.
a musician, of course. So
Right.
I'm actually just play for both of them. I have the church that I'm actually a part of now. we do gather on the Lord's Day, but I don't,
Right.
I've totally abandoned even Lord's Day Sabbatarianism for sure.
Right. And that's one of the things where I would take an exception to the historical Reformed confessions, right? Is I'm not like I'm a Lord's Day guy, but I'm not a Sabbatarian within the Lord's Day. I think, still having recreational activities and like if you gotta mow on the Lord's Day, go mow and rest in the Lord on the Lord's Day.
Right.
Just make sure you gather with the saints. That's the priority, right? Like the big thing is, what is our priority, right? Is it the worship of God and the fellowship of the saints or not? And if we're prioritizing that, and it sounds like the two of you are, as far as I can tell, like
we both of us, absolutely,
like by all means, like fantastic, and then we can quibble over definitions later, right?
Right. Dude, and so also just Jimmy, so I wrote something down. Usually I don't even that's unorthodox for me to write stuff down, but I did write this one thing down, and this is maybe the last question I'm gonna ask on this subject. But I mean, this is such an interesting thing, and it's pretty cool that like these interviews take different turns, according to people's interests.
That's why I love them.
Yeah.
You never know what you're gonna get. I mean,
right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
this is not scripted.
No, it's definitely not scripted at all. But we talked about just people being in, just religions that are denominations that may be, you could almost pretty much say cults, or like that deviate from traditional, I guess Protestant beliefs or whatever. How what should people do that are coming out of these type of things, or what should people do, people studying their way out of things, but like maybe the importance of finding a Bible believing church that doesn't deviate from the gospel?
That is a great question.
Like what would your advice be to people that may be searching for that kind of thing?
The first thing that comes to mind is be patient. I've talked to multiple guys over the years where it's, well, I was at this church for a while and whatever happened. And I was at that church for a while and they went woke. And I was at that church for a while and then XYZ. And so he's been at literally a member of 5 different churches in 4 years. Well, who was the common denominator? was that guy. And so what I encourage is patience. Don't change your convictions too hastily. And so it's really easy to want to have everything sorted out immediately, right? Thankfully, coming from the Church of Christ, they're Trinitarian. I didn't have to sort a whole lot of that, like the actual nature of God. They've got the hypostatic union of Christ and that kind of stuff down. Cool. I didn't have to figure out who God was, but I did have to unlearn some things about grace and mercy and salvation and justification and that kind of stuff. And so that took a minute. And so for a long time it was, I'm not Reformed. I'm not a Calvinist. I like Mark Driscoll, but I don't know about that election stuff. Right. Before he burned down his church, I just liked how he yelled at me. And so, all right, well, let's keep reading the Bible. What happens? Well, okay, I can't get away from this doctrine of election. It literally says it. All right, so I got to deal with that. And then for a year, I was telling my wife, I'm not post-millennial, but I think, and then eventually she's like, just admit it. Just admit it. You're post-millennial. I'm not a theonomist, but you're a theonomist. Just admit it. and that's really how my theological convictions have been formed, is through a couple of years. So if you're looking for a faithful local church, Google it, look at their statements of faith, see how specific they are, and be patient. It could be, you think your church is going XYZ direction. Well, ask some questions and then be patient, right? A lot of them, with the wokeness and whatever, a lot of those churches came out of that when they realized the error of certain things, in 2020, 2021. And so be patient. be really patient. I've been, my wife and I have been at my church 10 and a half years now. And the growth that we have seen in those 10 years has been remarkable. And if we had jumped ship because they weren't as explicitly, down the line of what I wanted to see 3 years in, we would have missed out on a whole lot for the last 7 years.
Oh wow, that's a very good point. Um, so tell your listeners, what is every square inch?
So every square inch is my occasional blog on Substack. You can see that on codyfields.com. I was not prepared to talk about this.
Oh man, I'm
But
telling you, we're gonna
I like,
hit you from every angle, brother.
yeah, I know it. This is what happens when you're just too into everything. Like I already talked about, guitars, theology, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So every square inch is, as the Moscow crowd puts it, all of Christ for all of life. That's the goal. So if I'm talking about politics, baseball, theology, whatever, I want to apply the Word of God into every area of life because He has all authority in heaven and on earth, which means I need to think about everything that I do in light of that. And
Sure.
so I have the textual version on codyfields.com or codyfields.substack.com, or it's also in the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast feed, because I'll record the audio version so you can hear my inflection just in case the text is a little too spicy for somebody. Because I'm really sarcastic. and so I like for people to also be able to hear me. So I'll record it.
I love it. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good time. And so, like I said, it's also on the Westminster Effects Doxology podcast feed, which is also another thing that I'm involved with that we haven't talked about.
That's a good segue. So tell us a little bit. So you have Westminster Effects is a pedal company and a podcast. Now, just to give everybody a little bit of an idea of what Westminster Effects is, it's not just some local company. Like, you work with bands from all over. Right here, I'm looking at Seth from Skillet, Cade. I don't know how you say his last name. Feiner.
Feiner. Yeah. So married to Gabby Barrett. Yes.
From American Idol. We got John Panzer with Colton Dixon and Fight the Fury. Ricky Skaggs, a legend. Scott from Zayo, Jason Wisdom, Becoming the Archetype, Death Therapy. Seth from Becoming the Archetype. You've got some big names. Everybody in Becoming the Archetype have used yours. Nate, Steve from Wolves at the Gate. Man, that's one of the popular bands in the group. People really love them. Dave with May, Drew with May, Bob with Petra. Dude, that's fantastic. I'm hoping to go see them for the first time on their anniversary tour. I hope I make it.
Oh, nice.
Mario with Chan, Jason with Worship Artistry, Alexa with Eyes Set to Kill, AJ with Eyes Set to Kill and Lose Control, Jacob Johnson. Man, I don't even know how to pronounce that guy. Selling Before the Win.
Bitoku. Okay. Yeah, he's their bassist. That's nice. That was a fun connection. My wife discovered them. They're from Japan, and they're young dudes, but playing like mid-2000s metalcore in Japan.
That's awesome.
And my wife found them on Instagram, and so I sent them a message. I was like, "Hey, my wife just told me about y'all, and good stuff. Let me know if you ever need anything." And he's like, "I will take you up on that." And so he's probably my most, other than Seth, but we'll get to that. But Bitoku uses the 1689 overdrive on his bass. And so he's always tagging me in comments. And so that's been a lot of fun to work with those guys.
We actually interviewed the first Christian metal band from Japan not long ago. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's sick. I think I saw that, and I just haven't listened to it. That's pretty cool. That's really cool.
All right. Kiefer Clinshaw.
He's a cello guy. Yeah.
Now, Hymns and Hops. Now, I know the guy who founded that, and I've been to some. They're amazing. So who at Hymns and Hops uses it?
I go way back with Jim Thompson. and so
Oh,
his mom was my Bible teacher in 6th grade at Southside
oh
Christian
my
School.
gosh, you got
So,
to be kidding. That's right. Yeah, so I went to school with him at North Greenville, and he's a pastor at my church. So yeah,
oh,
Jim,
okay. So you're at Fellowship Greenville then.
I
Okay,
am.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we just went and seen Five Iron Frenzy together not long ago.
let's go. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jim's awesome.
All right, so you got Greg with Angry Tone riff clips. I'm telling you, man, I'm going to be here for a while. Sean with Never Fall, Chris with Blackwater Bayou, Chris with Blackwater Bayou, John with Piranha.
Yep, they're a Greek metal band, so that's fun.
Wow, you're literally international.
Yep,
Adam with Coming Clean, John with Doc Solid. Oh, he's on your podcast.
yep. That's
Mike
Lutheran
with
John.
Mike with Saving Darkness, who we interviewed recently.
Yep.
Daryl with Still River Band, and Austin Anderson with Devoted. So, man, that's just a few. I'm sure there's more of you've had in the past and stuff. Disciple, I think you worked with at one point. But anyways, this is a
Yeah,
large roster.
I need to add the most recent one is I just haven't put it up there, but Joey Davis, who plays for Oliver Anthony.
Okay.
I just got him on the artist roster, so that's a lot
So
of
just
fun.
give us an overview of how does this company get started in the podcast and
Mhm.
everything.
So the brand got started on accident, actually. I had quit a social media. Well, I quit working for an advertising agency in Greenville and went freelance with social media management and blogging, stuff like that.
Nice. Okay.
And I built a General Guitar Gadgets Blues Breaker kit. And I was like, well, that was fun, and I have ideas. And so I started a brand after building one pedal, which I do not recommend to anybody. The first several builds were hideous internally,
Yeah.
and some of them still work even.
Okay.
And so,
Okay.
being a theology nerd and understanding that a lot of the worship world, the Christian music world needs some help theologically.
Yeah.
We'll just put it that way. It was, hey, get good tones, and here's a guy for you to read. Go read Edwards. Go read Spurgeon. Go read Calvin. All these guys. This family history that's so rich for a couple thousand years. Go read these guys. This is awesome. And so it's just grown from there to the point where like I've got international dealers. I go to the NAMM show in Anaheim every year, and
Okay.
I'm
Wow.
working with all these fantastic artists.
So you're doing that you're doing music full time. You made a career out of it.
I have, by the grace of God, truly by the grace of God, because it is a dumb little niche that I've carved out for myself.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. So tell us about the names of your pedals. Give us a few of them.
Yeah, so let's see. So we've got the Calvin compressor. Being a word nerd and appreciating a good pun. So like the Calvin compressor, like thinking of names for compressors. Well, Calvin's theology got compressed into the 5 points of Tulip, even though that was like the minority of what he wrote about. People don't realize like he was known as the theologian of the Holy Spirit in the Reformation. Like he wrote so much about the Holy Spirit. So it's kind of like, all right, so that's how we get the Calvin compressor. We have let's see, the 1689. So every guitar pedal builder has some variation of the Ibanez Tube Screamer, right? Like most well-known, most used overdrive in the world. Everybody from Stevie Ray Vaughan to Zakk Wylde has used it.
Okay.
And so the 1689 takes something great and it makes it better. And if you're Reformed, you immediately get that joke because the 1689 is almost verbatim the 1646 Westminster Confession that the Presbyterians use. And then they just change some stuff on the nature of the covenants and baptism. So, yeah, it takes something great, makes it better. All the Presbyterians roll their eyes about it because they don't believe me when I say that.
Right.
So, and then the best well known is the 2716 Seth Morrison signature distortion. So Seth from Skillet, like he's become a good friend, and that's been a lot of fun getting to know those guys. And I know Skillet is super controversial in the group,
No,
and I don't care.
It's like it's so many. Trust me, we have basically we have a big three, and it's like an ongoing joke at this point.
Oh yeah,
Of people of groups. It's like Striper, Skillet. Who's the other one?
Demon Hunter's
Demon Hunter. Thank you.
yeah.
all the time.
Anytime you post about any of them,
And
Yeah.
Theocracy would be number 4.
yeah, Theocracy would definitely be number
Yeah,
4.
we have a rule that Skillet has to be posted at least once a day. No, I'm joking.
Right. But what I will say is those dudes walk what they talk.
Yeah.
And so that's been really cool getting to know those guys.
And girl. Come on now.
What's that?
What happened?
Those dudes and girl.
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We all know that dude is a gender neutral term. Okay. So,
there we go.
Right. So like
again.
Yeah. So like I talk to Seth multiple times a week, and that's fantastic. And then I've met John. He's been on my podcast.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Super chill dude. He is exactly behind the scenes. He is exactly how he is behind a microphone or on his podcast. He does not change. So that's yeah, and so that's been really cool to witness, especially like the multi-generational nature of their fan base. Like the fact that they've stayed faithful and they're family friendly for that matter. So you've got people bringing their kids to Skillet shows where like they grew up listening to Skillet and now their kids are growing up listening to Skillet, and so that's been really cool to see and discuss. And so really thankful for that connection. So the 2716.
You designed that specifically for him, is what you're saying?
Yeah. So Seth, when we got to talking about doing a signature pedal, and we remember it differently. I remember him bringing it up first, and he remembers me bringing it up first. So in the resurrection, we'll find out, right? So basically, what he wanted to do was to replicate his live tone, which is normally split between a rev generator and a Mesa Boogie dual rectifier, going into their own 4x12 cabs. And if you're just going to go buy that, that's pretty pricey. And so what he wanted was to get that tone in a $150 box, so normal old dudes and kids who listen to them and want to sound like that can get that sound out of any amp. And so that was the goal, and I think we nailed it. And
now,
so
since you have that, are there other people that buy that one and like it as well?
What do you mean? Like buy that and
buy his signature one? Do the other people use it?
Oh yeah, like that's my go-to sound for high gain stuff. So with the new Igniting the Sky stuff that you can find on Spotify, the higher gain stuff is at least 2/3 2716. So I use it all the time. It's my favorite pedal, not just because it's made me the most money out of my line, but like the story behind it and the tones we get, and so it's named 2716. This will bring it back to the Revelation theme. So 27, Revelation being the 27th book of the New Testament, 1-6. Really, you could start it in 5, but we needed 4 because of the traditional 5150, right? Like with Eddie Van Halen. So I'll even start in verse 4. Grace to you and peace from him who is and who was and who is to come, and from the 7 spirits who are before his throne, and from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of kings on earth. To him who loves us and has freed us from our sins by his blood. And here's verse 6, and made us a kingdom, priests to his God and Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen. So he wanted it to tie in with their album Dominion and the song Dominion even. And we got that. And if you look closely at the artwork, this is my favorite part about the artwork. We have Greek text ghosted in, and it's 4th century unseal of Revelation 1:6. that Dr. James White, the apologist, provided to us. So he gave us a screen grab of that, and I was just like, yes, let me nerd out on this.
I was about to say that's super nerdy. Awesome.
Yeah,
very much so.
We went hard on all of it.
Awesome.
So it was a good time, and I tell people all the time that is the hardest I've ever had to work on developing a pedal, because like if it's just me, like okay, I like it, I'll sell it, whatever. But if somebody else is putting his name on it, it has to be perfect. And so Seth pushed me for about a year. It was a lot of good push and pull, and it was a fun development process. And I would send him something. All right, let's tweak this, and I tweak that. And all right, let's tweak this part. Okay, cool. Let's tweak that. All right, I need more of this or less of this, and whatever. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
The podcast just naturally developed out of that business.
Yep. So I am the only guitar gear builder in the world with a Theology and Church Life podcast. And so, I just kind of naturally grew out of the brand. It's me, my pastor, and then it was every episode before, and now it's basically when he can fit it because of his schedule has gotten janky. Our confessional Lutheran friend John from Nebraska, who I got to know because we were always on the same side of the debates in all the worship guitar groups.
Yeah, okay.
where people didn't give a crap about reading the Bible or whatever, and we were like, no, this is what the Bible says, and you can deal with it. And so we got to be good friends out of that, and actually have met him in person. Oh, nice. He helped me out at the NAMM show for like that entire week one time, and that was a good time. So thankful for Bradley and John putting up with my nonsense for basically 45 minutes a week.
That's fun.
That is hilarious. Okay, so your pedals, you have some pedals for sale like on a website or whatever, or are you mostly doing custom stuff or what?
Yeah, so I don't do any custom at this point.
You don't do any custom. It's just all.
Yeah. If you're in Skillet, I'll do something custom for you, but that's
let me go join you real quick. Now let me stop. That's cool, though. That's cool. Have you ever had keyboards? Have you ever had keyboards like use your pedals?
Yes. Especially like my chorus pedal and reverb pedal. My delay pedal works well. That's another story with the naming of that one. Since we're over an hour, that was my first cease and desist letter. We'll just put it that way. So I've gotten 3 cease and desist letters and a warning from someone else. But
wow, you're racking them up, man. Good job.
Yeah, I do what I can. What's trademark infringement anyway? But I have plenty of stuff that works well with keys, plenty of stuff that works well with bass. You go to westminstereffects.com and you can either buy directly from me, or I have dealers practically worldwide, including distribution in the European Union. So
nice.
Awesome.
So what we're looking in the future for Igniting the Sky? What you got going on?
Yeah, so we're working on, when is this going to release, by the way?
In the future.
Tomorrow.
Okay, so if it's tomorrow, then this Friday. If it's tomorrow, then this Friday we're releasing the second song from our upcoming EP. And so basically we're putting together, we were going to do a concept album, but instead we broke it up into 2 EPs because with everybody's schedule, it's easier to do 5 songs at a time. And so this will be Voyager 1 out of Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, obviously named after the spacecraft. And so it's a concept album loosely telling the story of Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation in science fiction format.
I love it.
Okay. The really funny thing is, I used this line at the last show that we played. It basically treats the Reformation as the cure for a virus. And I know with 2020 and all, some people might be like, oh yeah, very funny. Yeah, it's cute. You made it after COVID. No, we wrote this like 10 years ago. And the line I used is, this was all written before COVID was a twinkle in Dr. Fauci's eye. So
Dude, that is so interesting. So this is funny. I have a bunch of music that I wrote like 10 years ago, also,
Yeah.
and under the name the Protestant Reformation.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
And and it's like this is supposed to, it's kind of the soundtrack to the kind of stuff that happens. It's an instrumental band. It's like progressive metal type of stuff.
Yeah.
Like kind of Rush if Rush was a progressive metal band. So it's not like Dream Theater level, but it's like, so it's just so funny. Like it's very much inspired by obviously the Protestant Reformation, but because it's instrumental Protestant
for sure.
I see a collaboration here. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You're right. We might be hitting you up for some Keys stuff soon.
All right, let's go. Hey, I'm with it. Let's go. But yeah, that's just funny, man. So many parallels, so many things, that we've talked about.
Oh yeah.
I think one day we'll have to go into a deep dive. I've already done it with Jimmy. Sorry, guy. Sorry. I'll bombard him with information, but about like the new woke movement versus traditional wokeism.
Oh no!
So okay. So basically, I'm a traditional wokeism person. We've been, I've been in woke circles all my life, and I'm like, in 2020, it's like, where in the heck did this new woke come from? I have an answer, but I'm not going to talk about it on this podcast.
Right.
We're talking about igniting the sky
And
today.
I've been reading Megan Basham's book recently, so that's an entire can of worms.
Have you heard Erykah Badu's song "Master Teacher," which is it's probably the song that brought the word woke back into pop culture back in '98.
I know who she is, but I'm not familiar with that song.
Right. Okay. Well, I know you've heard "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably the big woke song that that started like the new woke movement until 2020 when it got hijacked by the LGBT community. But,
right.
But yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that another time. Songs, we're gonna dive deep into like some other subject. That's me and Jimmy, we've been teasing some stuff. We'll see what happens. Anyway, that's another subject. Let's get back to nuclear weapons.
Nuclear weapons and Jesus, baby.
Right, exactly. Yo, oh my goodness. Okay, so outside of metal, this is my last like music question. But outside of metal, what are your favorite? What's your favorite type of music to listen to? Like, what are you digging these days?
Yeah, so I still listen to a decent amount of pop punk. Whether it's MXPX, Alkaline Trio, Blink 182, stuff like that. Mostly old Blink, Stopping Around, their self-titled album from 2003, though I also enjoy the one that they put out with Matt Skiba from Alkaline. So there's that. I occasionally dabble in some classical stuff. It being August, I need to start looking for Handel's Messiah tickets because there are few pieces of music greater than Handel's Messiah, and everybody owes it to themselves to go find an orchestral rendition of that live.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah. So you're welcome. So yeah, that hardcore metal, it's a lot of fun. So,
cool.
Most recently this year, I know this is the Christian metal group, but I've been listening to a lot of Lorna Shore because I'm super basic like that.
So good, man.
They're so good. The Pain Remains album is just incredible, start to finish.
Yes.
And I'm an album guy. I like to listen to an album front to back, and every bit of that is just so obviously meticulously planned.
Yeah.
And here's what I'll say for the Christian metal group. We can learn a lot from that album with like all of the riffs, like they're impeccably planned. Will Ramos, you can tell that he put so much thought into the tonality of his screams front to back. Like, am I going to go guttural? Am I going to go shrieky? Whatever.
Where are they out of? Are they American?
I don't recall. Yeah, they are.
They are. So, do you hear spiritual themes though in their music?
Absolutely. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, they're not Christian, but they are thought provoking. We'll put it that
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. Well, Cody, we've learned a lot about you, from the Braves to Lorna Shore and all in between. What is one thing? What is one thing about you that people might not know?
I told you I wouldn't know this.
This is
okay.
thought provoking, right?
Yeah. So, okay, here's one thing I don't think I've talked about on my podcast, because I've talked about so many things on the podcast. My left shoulder is double jointed.
Oh, whoa.
My left shoulder is very double jointed, so I'm not going to do it here because I haven't done it in a very long time. So I'd probably tear something at this point.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Last time I checked, I could like keep my hands together and put them behind my back, pop this in and out of joint, and be okay. So there's that.
Was that ever useful in your life growing up?
No, I never got arrested, so. I never had to go back to front and then run away from the cops, and it never came in handy for anything.
But you always have that in your back pocket, though, right?
I do,
Yeah.
just in case the Gestapo gets me.
Nice.
Wow. No, that's funny. Well, here's my last question. What is your favorite thing about being a Christian?
So, the more I delve deeply into the faith, the more I see it as a thing of beauty, right? Like thinking of the we being in a postmodern culture, we want to hammer on truth, right? And rightly so. But the medievals would talk about truth, goodness, and beauty, and they all intersect, right? And so the Christian faith is truly beautiful. And Jay, as we talked about, the post-millennial hope, Reformed soteriology, it is beautiful. It is a thing to behold, right? Like it's glorious. And so looking through like church history and all of redemptive history, God has done this beautiful thing that'll obviously culminate in the last day in the resurrection of the dead. In his son Jesus Christ, and that is glorious and it's beautiful, and it just comes down to the whole thing being beautiful for me. You can't beat it.
That's awesome.
So, what can the Christian metal community do to support Igniting the Sky?
Go follow us, Facebook, Instagram. Hold your nose and follow us on TikTok if you have to. Go give us a follow and a listen on Spotify. And then invite us to play a show. Booking shows is tough. And so invite us to come play a show with you if you're in a band, especially in the upstate South Carolina-ish area. Obviously getting into eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, Georgia, stuff like that. We'd love to play a show with you.
I may be working on something in the area. I'll let you know if it ever comes
Absolutely,
together.
definitely.
That'd be awesome, man. Well, that sounds good, man. Y'all check out Igniting the Sky everywhere you can find music and support them at a show. Man, that's good. Great. Well, I appreciate it, man. This has been fun. I hope you have a great day.
Yeah, fellas. Thanks for having me on.
Dude.